seems like one of those weekends where just nothing has gone your way. I mean, where do you go from here? There's still a triple header to come, things to fight for.
Yeah, I mean, geez, this is definitely a weekend to forget. It's a shame because I love Brazil. And also, just everyone in the team, every single person in the team, they turn up every week and give it their absolute best. And to come away with nothing, to not finish a race, it's the second time in the year, it's really devastating, and I feel terrible for the team. I'm sorry for my part in qualifying, putting myself in that position. I just have to, we'll get back up tomorrow and just give it another go.
Can a circuit that has given you everything also become the scene of your worst fall? In Brazil, Lewis Hamilton had his worst race in years. But was it his fault or the red car? Hamilton arrived in Brazil with many more questions than answers. The change to Ferrari had not been a bed of roses. Expectations were very high from the moment he signed the contract. A 7-time world champion joining the most historic team in the sport. It was the perfect story. But the reality of the SF25, up to that point in the season, was a frustrating mix of promised speed and profound technical deficiencies. Since the first free practice sessions on Friday, the signs were not encouraging. Hamilton reported on the radio that the car was not behaving as it should, that it was not able to generate the correct temperature in the rear tires. A problem that, in other circumstances, might seem minor, but not in Interlagos. Not on a circuit where traction in low and medium speed corners is everything. If your tires are not in the optimal window, you don't compete. You survive. You barely turn. On Saturday in qualifying, disaster materialized. Hamilton was eliminated in Q2, qualifying 13th. And the most alarming thing was not the result itself. It was helplessness, the body language, the subsequent statements. The car is fine, I just couldn't get the tires to work. There were no excuses. There was no anger. Just resignation. In the Ferrari garage, the silence was deathly. The team knew that the problem was not the driver, was the machine. And worse still, they didn't have a solution. During the session, the radio stations picked up heartbreaking messages. Hamilton spoke to his engineer in a tone that was unusual for him. He said phrases like, "No grip on the butts," or "We need to fix the butts, buddy." The use of the word friend, there was not a simple informality. It was almost a request for help. A plea from a champion who knew he was behind the wheel of a car unable to accompany him. But the most devastating thing came after getting out of the car. When the media approached him for explanations, they found an honest, almost unarmed Hamilton. "I'm not feeling well. I'll do what I can tomorrow. I'm not expecting anything, to be honest. Another weekend to write off, I guess." It was not a strategic comment. It was the voice of someone who is living the weight of the failure of a project that promised much more. Interlagos, which had so many times been the scene of his greatest achievements, this time became the mirror of his deepest frustration. The fall was not sudden. It was slow, painful, and completely public. And although there was still Sunday left to run, all the symptoms pointed to an inevitable outcome. Sunday, the day when everything should be transformed. When the greats, even after a disastrous classification, find a way to reverse their destiny. But for Lewis Hamilton, the 2025 Brazilian GP not only did not offer redemption, but it marked one of the darkest days of his career in Formula One. A circuit that had given him ovations, unforgettable victories, and almost mythical moments, now turned its back on him. Starting from position 13 was not new for Hamilton. The Briton has won races from the back, he has climbed furiously through traffic, he has shown that when there is rhythm, anything is possible. But this time, from lap 1, it was clear that there would be no miracles. As soon as the traffic lights were turned off, he found himself involved in chaos in turn 1. It was a slight brush, but with devastating consequences. Carlos Sainz, now a Williams driver, slightly closed his line, causing lateral contact with Hamilton's SF25. The result was immediate. He lost momentum, lost positions, and fell from 13th to 18th place before completing the first sector. Without rhythm, without room to maneuver, and with a car that had already proven to be unpredictable since qualifying, Hamilton was trapped in a difficult peloton, surrounded by cars that were not going to give way easily. But the real emotional and sporting blow came just a few seconds later. On the main straight, at the close of that same first lap, Hamilton tried to defend position against Franco Colapinto's Alpine. What seemed like a routine move turned into a catastrophe. In a miscalculation, or possibly due to poor grip on his rear tires, Hamilton touched the rear of the Argentine's car. The impact completely destroyed its front wing and damaged key elements of the SF-25's flat bottom and radiators. The paddock fell silent. The cameras focused on the Ferrari box. The engineers couldn't believe their eyes. The first lap had not yet finished and the car of its star driver was already completely compromised. Hamilton managed to return to the pits, but the damage was too extensive. Changing the front wing was not enough. The car had lost downforce, the balance had become uncontrollable, and each lap on the track only served to further wear down a broken car from the bottom up. And still he tried to continue. For almost 40 laps, Hamilton remained on the track, fighting against a car that no longer responded, against frustration, against a destiny that seemed written since Friday. Each lap was a demonstration of endurance, more mental than mechanical, until finally the team decided to retire it. It was unsustainable. It wasn't about dignity. It was about physical integrity. It was about not continuing to expose a champion to a spectacle that bordered on the unworthy. It was his first retirement at Interlagos since 2012, and it was not a driving error. It was the culmination of a weekend where everything failed, where the car did not respond, where the strategy was ineffective, where the errors accumulated without the possibility of correction. But perhaps the most serious thing was not the abandonment. It was what it represented. Because Ferrari's double DNF, with Leclerc also out of action, made it clear that the SF-25 is still far from being a car capable of consistently fighting with McLaren or Red Bull. And even worse, he is not even capable of giving a talent like Hamilton a car with which he can defend himself. Interlagos closed its doors that Sunday with a bitter mixture of sadness and disbelief. The Brazilian fans who celebrated Hamilton for so many years, this time bid him farewell with melancholic applause. Because they knew it wasn't him. Because they knew that he was alone, fighting against an invisible giant that is becoming increasingly heavier, the weight of a team that does not quite live up to its legend. And in that final silence, when Hamilton got out of the car, there was no anger, only disappointment. A disappointment that cannot be erased with words or intentions. A disappointment that marks a before and after. Formula One is a brutal sport. Not only because of the G-forces, nor because of the physical wear and tear, nor even because of the obvious risks that are taken at more than 300 kilometers per hour. The truly devastating thing about this sport is what happens when talent is no longer enough. When what defines your performance is no longer your skill behind the wheel, but the invisible limitations of an unresponsive machine. And in the case of Lewis Hamilton, that invisible weight has begun to be felt like never before. Since his arrival at Ferrari, the story was one of redemption. An opportunity to close his career on a high, guiding the most legendary team of all back to the championship. A perfect narrative. But what is happening is exactly the opposite. A progressive, silent disillusionment, which each weekend erodes that promise a little more. And Brazil was the emotional breaking point. In the paddock, many noticed something different. It wasn't just the usual frustration after a bad race. It was something else. Something deeper. Hamilton, who for years had been known for his stoicism, for his ability to rise even in adversity, began to show signs of mental wear and tear. His body language, his statements, even his voice, reflected a driver who is no longer only fighting against rivals, but against the feeling of being trapped in a project that does not respond. When in front of the microphones he said, "I don't feel well," it was not an empty phrase. It was a confession. A flash of vulnerability that few would dare to expose. Because in the elite of motorsport, admitting that hope is lost is almost taboo. But Hamilton did it. And in doing so, he made it clear that the real conflict he is experiencing is not only in the car, it is inside him. This is a man who has won everything. Who has fought against racism in the category, who has redefined the limits of marketing, influence, and social impact in F1. But no matter how many titles, records, or followers you have, none of that protects you from the feeling of helplessness when your car limits you lap after lap. The weight he carries on his shoulders is no longer just that of the helmet and the red Ferrari suit. It is the expectations of millions, the one in history, that of knowing oneself observed, judged, and in many cases underestimated. Because in this sport, results are everything, and the narrative changes with each fast lap, or with each abandonment. And perhaps the hardest thing about all this is that Hamilton has not forgotten how to drive. He hasn't lost his talent. He hasn't lowered his level. He is simply inside a car that does not allow him to demonstrate it. And that, for a competitor of his caliber, is silent torture. But the story is not over. Because if there is something that defines the greats, it is their ability to reinvent themselves even in the darkest moments. To find strength when there is nothing left. And if anyone has proven capable of that, it's him. For now, Brazil leaves an open wound. An emotional mark on a circuit that once represented joy and now symbolizes frustration. But the season continues and Hamilton's story with Ferrari is still being written. It remains to be seen if this stage will be remembered as a twilight or as the spark that ignited his last great act of sporting rebellion. Because in Formula One, as in life, sometimes it is in defeat where the legend is truly forged. The 2025 Brazilian Grand Prix not only left us with a sporting result, he left us a mirror. A brutal reflection of what happens when an ambitious project, built with excessive expectations, begins to fracture under the pressure of time and results. What we saw at Interlagos was more than a bad race. It was a symbol. A symptom of something bigger happening at Ferrari. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.